Tell me when ready.
You're good.
All right, I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Wednesday, September 8th. All are in attendance except for Dan Dvorsitz, who might be joining us in a little bit. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. I don't see anybody on for public comment, but do we have public comment? Okay, hearing none, I will move on to Brianna, communications correspondence. None?
No.
Okay.
Wait.
The approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the August 18th, 2021 special meeting minutes.
I'll second it. Any discussions on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, bring it to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Steve, we're on to you. Can't hear you, Steve.
Wait a minute, I got my dogs barking. Let me close. Sorry about that. They're usually pretty good. You know, the grocery store that we don't know what it is? It's supposed to open in December now instead of November. They doing some redesign on it and changing the interior. So that they're saying that will open in December. We're still configuring the Munis system to adapt to the new time and attendance system, Chronos. And we're going through department by department. We have to update a lot of the codes and things like that. It's going well. And we should be up and running with that pretty soon. The bonding for our new school, we'll be putting that out shortly, and bids will be opened on October 6th. As a part of that, we are planning on refinancing some of our existing debt because we believe we can get lower rates. And right now, if we got a similar rate to the last time we went out, we would save $525,000 over the life of the borrowing. The borrowing will be the same tenor as what we have now. So we won't be extending the time of the debt. We're just refinancing it. And of that 525,000, I think 475,000 would be the town and 50,000 for the WPCA. On the streetscape, phase 3, we had hoped to start this year. We had submitted it to the DOT District 4 in January for their approval of the final plan. And it took them about 5.5 months to give us that approval. That pushed us out. To order the granite is an 8 to 12 week lead time. And we couldn't do anything until the DOT approved our design and bidders. And so that would put us so far into this year that we would run into the issue of possibly not being able to pave the roads, pave the road again because the asphalt plants would close. So we made a decision. We're going to start that in April of next year. We have our contractor locking in some prices of some of the materials, electric and possibly granite. We've gotten a guarantee granite won't go up by more than 5%, but we're still well under budget on that. So we'll start that in April of next year. On phase 4, which will run from the Four Corners up to Newberry Village, we're doing the design. We met with the state out there and also the developer of the Enclave project. And much of the project will depend on when the Enclave is doing their work, because they're going to be doing the streetscape in front of their project, which is a significant about 600 feet of the project. We're asking the state to allow us to do the rest of phase 4 and just put in a simple macadam walk to connect the two sections that we're doing. We haven't gotten word from them whether they'll approve that. We hope to start that next year also. Phase 5, which is fully funded and ready to go, we are going to wait. That is the intersection of Laurel Hill Road, the new supermarket, and Federal Road. And so we don't want to do work in that intersection. That might change because of the construction across the street. So we're going to wait to do that and coordinate it with the development. That also should be in the spring. For all those who are interested, we're going to be doing Hazardous Waste Recycling Day at the high school this Saturday, the 11th, from 9 to 3. It is free for all residents. They can bring any hazardous materials they have, and we will recycle them. So if you got oil, whatever it is, batteries, whatever you have, chemicals, pesticides, bring it Saturday to the high school and we'll recycle it. We have applied for a grant for the town hall property. If you remember, we did a grant 3 years ago to extend the Still River Greenway from the police station up to the parking lot next to the firehouse. We had originally estimated that to be about $240,000. We got a grant for $207,000. When we finally got pricing on what we wanted to do, it was closer to $400,000, and we just didn't feel a markdown value added plan would work. We looked at three different options. None of them really, two of them didn't work. And the third one, I'm sorry, was the most expensive and most desirable option. So we're going to try to go out and do that again. The grant that we're applying for, you can receive up to $1 million. So we're going to create an updated master plan for the town hall property and include some things in that so we can put it into the grant application, which is due November 2nd. So we should be in pretty good shape on that. We don't know when we'll hear about that grant. My guess is it's usually the January, February timeframe, and we'll continue to do that. One of the good things about the plan is the most desirable and opted for option that we had originally was to make the lower fields handicapped accessible. And we're going to continue to do that. We're right now in near term, we're going to be looking at the phone systems for the schools and the town and the library. Right now we're on separate phone systems. We think because we're having to put a whole new phone system in the new school, it's the time to look at it. It would be nice if we didn't have to dial 9 digits to call somebody down the hall. So we're going to look at that. I don't know if we'll save money or be cost effective, but we're going to look at it. On our IT side, we are moving into what they call MFA, multi-factor authentication. A number of towns in Connecticut have been attacked by ransomware. We get phishing, I'm sure you guys do too. We get phishing attacks on a weekly basis. We have to upgrade our systems. And so we're going to start with the multi-factor authentication where you have to put in a code or get a second means of proving who you are. The Board of Ed and the town are working on that cooperatively. And so we're going to move forward with that. We did hire a new police officer yesterday. Officer Brandon Jernison will be joining us after a long search. He was clearly the best candidate. And it's almost a little bit like keeping it in the family. He is Marty Flynn's son-in-law, if you can believe that. The WPCA has continued to do some work at the Four Corners by the Craft Center for the sewers that they're hoping to put in there. Remember, they had asked the town to donate some money, which we could do with the Arpa funds if we so chose. So they're moving forward with that. They're also having a meeting with the state, I believe the week after next, to push for a grant to do the sewer study in the Candlewood Shores, Upper Candlewood Lake Road area. That's a more long-term project, but they're still moving at a pace with it. Storm damage. We did have a culvert under West Wisconsin partially collapse. It's not dangerous. It was damaged in the storm. The good news is we already had that in the capital plan to fix, and the bid came in below the budget. So we're in good shape on that. We'll be doing that hopefully in the next month and a half. We did have some flooding in the library on the lower level. As you know, it all kinds of rolls down the hill into there. They had some mud and a fair bit of water. We were able to clean that all up the next day without any major damage. Today, I had a staff meeting and we asked each department to update their capital plans and submit them to me by the end of October. And then we'll have meetings with each of the department heads. And then the plan is to have the capital committee that we've discussed meet in November and December to review those capital items for the upcoming budget season. We still haven't fully decided, and I wanted to get your input on the makeup of that committee. I would think at least one person each from the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance. I'm open to ideas on that. We want to get good people. So we would think that that capital committee would meet 2, 3, 4 times, however many times as we need during November and December, and call in department heads as needed to explain projects, to make sure that we understand it fully. And then we'll have a much better idea when we move into the actual the budget season, what we want to do. So I'm open to ideas on that, guys. Tax sales, we are in that season. We have 8 properties up for sale for back taxes. We haven't had a lot of success in the past selling, but the way it works is somebody can bid as long as they pay the back taxes and other fees, but the owner of the property has 6 months to reclaim the property back. So if they come in and repay the taxes, they can take the property back. But we're going to go ahead and move forward with that. On Blight, we're moving forward on 20 Station Road and 846 Federal Road. As you know, the Blight panel has ordered demolition of both of those properties. Back in 2018, we hired a consultant called TRC to do a study of the dry cleaning chemicals that are in the ground from the dry cleaning service that was at 20 Station Road. And they did a full examination and they went all the way up Laurel Hill Road to see how far those contaminants had spread. They do go up Laurel Hill Road. We are going out to bid for demolition on 20 Station Road right now. We're still looking at 846 because we don't have any of the details on that. We do have all the information on 846, so we know we can request a good bid. Back in 2018, TRC estimated that the demo cost for that building would be between $180,000 and $190,000. The asbestos has already been removed from the building, but there are PCBs in the glazing and other contaminants that have to be handled and managed, as well as removing much of the surface dirt and laying down new dirt that isn't contaminated. If we did that, we would then, the town would have to pay for it, and then we'd immediately put a lien on the property. But at the same time, when we're doing this right now, we do not want to take possession of a property and own the downstream liability stream from the contaminants. So the state has a program called ABC, where we can go in, foreclose, buy the property, and the state takes over the downstream contamination issues and deals with those separately. So we would only be responsible for 20 Station Road. Ryan, for your information, when the, you probably don't know this, but when the consultant came in, there was no remediation economically possible on the properties. So the only thing they can suggest is that you cap the property. You can't get the chemicals out of the ground in any way that's economically viable or feasible. So if we could do those 2 things, 3 things, demo the building, get the ABC contract, and foreclose on that property, then it would be either a saleable property or we could use it for town purposes, and it would remove the blight. But it's going to be, it takes time to do these things. It takes time to do these things. So we're moving forward on all our other blight properties. We do have a couple that have said they are going to clean up their properties. In fact, a couple have cleaned up their properties. Got my button stuck. Hold on a second. Got my button stuck in my thing. So moving on to the library, the RFPs that come out for the window replacement, we expect those bids back at the end of the month, and hopefully they will be in the range of our budget. We're pretty sure they will be. And lastly, but not least, we formed the Arpa Committee. They have met and they're going to be meeting twice a month for the next 6 months. and perhaps more often. They are looking, and we are looking for any additional projects. So we're encouraging any residents to submit ideas. We've asked them to come back to the board and give us their suggestions in February. At that time, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance will make a decision as to how we will spend the money. The process will work similarly to the way we currently do budgets. The Board of Selectmen makes recommendations, and then the Board of Finance gets the final say. I think there might have been some question on that, but we're going to follow the normal process we do in any budget. There is a possible opportunity that we may be able to take part of the $5 million that the town is receiving and recoup it through the process they're calling lost revenue. And we've done that formula. Marcia's run that formula. We're double checking it with our auditors. But if Marcia's correct, and I would bet dollars to donut, she is, we could take $1.9 million in lost revenue. The advantage of that is you can take that money directly into your budget and spend it on anything you want, anything. And so that would give us a lot more flexibility if we wanted to do more capital projects, infrastructure projects, which, except though we said this before, with the exception of sewer, broadband, and water lines, you can't use the ARPA money to do infrastructure projects. So that gives us just more flexibility. And that's it for me.
All right, Steve, question on the lost revenue. Could we use that to pay down the debt?
Yeah, we can use it for anything. It's just like unassigned general fund balance. That's the way it becomes, as I understand it. Marcia, you agree?
There's only certain things we can use it for. It's on a town-wide basis. We can't use it for pensions. I think we cannot use it for debt. But we could use it for roads, and they do give us a list, but it's much more open.
Yeah.
Okay, did you read the other day that Ridgefield used it to reduce the mill rate?
Yeah, I did read that.
So they took basically their 1 point something million and reduced the burden on the taxpayers overall.
Yeah. Yep, I did read about that. That's an interesting, I guess their thinking was that this benefits everyone in town, improves resiliency, helps people who might, be having difficulties. It's an option, something we could think about.
Now, what the process, so we all understand it, is this committee that's being head by Colette and Rita Steffen puts forth the plan to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen then presents it to the Board of Finance, correct?
Yep, correct.
And then the Board of Selectmen vote on what they want to do with it, and then that has to be voted on by the Board of Finance to finalize it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's a normal budget, like a budget. It's like a special appropriation process.
Okay. All right, very good. Any questions for Steve?
Steve?
Mhm.
I have a question on the back taxes. Is the revenue recognized as current revenue? Or could we put that aside, put it straight to like capital non-recurring to help pay down?
Marcia's got more detail on this, but I think it's for the 2021 year. Is that correct, Marcia?
On the tax sales,
I think
Yeah.
you, on tax sales?
I
Sorry,
let
yeah,
my,
I meant the tax sales.
on the tax sales, some were already in the July and August collections, so they'll go against last year, but anything going forward will go against this year if it's ultimately collected. That we have, let's say we sell something for 20,000, we have to keep that 20,000 aside. And then 6 months later, if the original homeowner or property owner doesn't pay everything off, then it's actually revenue. So it'll be a while before we know if it's going to be revenue.
And we haven't recognized any of this on the budget, right? We haven't assumed that we would get any of this.
No, the back taxes, no, but remember that every year we do include taxes that have not been paid yet in the budget.
Yeah,
And then we adjust it by a collection rate.
Right.
This is not a one-time kind of hit that we're going to bring to the budget at
Does this end up getting included as part of the collection rate?
all. No, I don't think so.
Okay, good. Okay, so it's just icing on the cake then.
Right. Because the collections rates is every single property versus the actual collections.
Right,
These
right,
are
right.
one-offs. There are 8 of them. It's not a ton of money. It's, I think, just under $200,000. So it's not a huge amount of money. And it's very rare that one of these properties actually sell. The property owners actually usually just pay up and then we take the money in, which is, we much prefer that.
Where is the list of these properties, Steve?
I can get you one. We have to post them. They're in the lobby of Town Hall right now on the doors. We can get you a list of them if you like.
I just was thinking it should probably be put on the website somewhere, no? So
Well, yeah, we try to be,
discreet?
yes,
Okay.
you know, if people get into trouble. Advertising it is not something.
Enough said, enough said, enough said. Don't have to go anymore. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Steve,
Eileen, go first. Eileen, go ahead.
just a question about the streetscape projects. Do we have anything for any development going forward that they'll cover the costs of any of the streetscape, or is this all just coming out of, we're just going to keep applying for grants?
The Enclave is going to pay for their 600 feet.
Okay.
So that's about $500,000 to $750,000.
But that was from a long time ago. I mean, they've been trying to get in here for a long, long time, right?
Yeah, well, they've had that project up for about 10 years. They've never actually moved
Yeah.
forward on it, but they say they're going to. That's why we're going to include them. Going forward for the next 2 projects for phase 4 and phase 5, both of those are funded at 85% with grants.
Okay.
So the town is only paying 15%. So we didn't think at this point in time, because we're trying to attract the right development to Brookfield, that we needed to do that, but we do have the right for any streetscape project to charge property owners adjacent to the streetscape up to 50% of the cost.
Okay.
And I'm sure we will do that in the future.
Thanks.
Are you sure about that, Steve, those numbers? Because I have different numbers.
What, different numbers in what way?
And I don't think it's all 85%. The last one is, but I think the other ones are like 20 and 30% that we paid. But I think phase 4, we paid 20%. I think it's an 80-20.
I said the last 2.
The last 2.
Phase 5. That's what I said. Both of those are at right around 85%. Phase 1, the town paid about 46%. Phase 2, the town paid 30. I don't have the number in front of me, 30-something%. But in these last 2, we got grants for right around 85% of
No, the
each.
number's wrong then, because if the total cost of phase 4 is 2.4 million, the outside fund is 1.92, our contribution's 480, that's 20%. Unless the numbers have changed.
The numbers have probably changed. I'll look at it. and
Can
come
we
back.
get a summary of all of that, like you just
Sure.
had?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we've given that to you before. We'll get it again and send it to you tomorrow.
Because I think phase 4 was even in our financial report at 20%. So that's why if the numbers changed, our financial report that we filed through Marcia's wrong.
Okay. We'll get that update to you.
Okay.
Steve, I had a question on the refinancing of the debt. If rates don't come in where we want, can we pull the refinancing on the? Obviously, the school bond's gonna stay, but I mean on the
Yeah.
refinance.
Yes, we could choose. Remember, it's an offering.
Yep,
Right?
got it.
And they offer, so we could say, no, we don't want to do that.
Fair enough. That's what I thought.
You know, if the cost of the refinance costs more than we would save, then we say, no, we're just
Right.
staying where we are.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Anything else for Steve? Thanks, Steve. A lot of good news, actually.
Wait, do
Thank you.
you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hear
Oh,
you guys
sorry
well.
about that. Hello, I was on double mute. Sorry about that. Couple questions on the lost revenue on the ARPA money.
Mhm.
So I think I heard you say that it can be used in the budget, but not to pay down debt. Can it be used for debt service?
Yes, that's what I said, but Marcia said Marcia, you said you didn't think that was correct, right?
We couldn't use it to pay down debt service, as far as I can remember. There's lots of rules out there, but there's so many other things that we could assign it to that it would be,
Exactly.
it would seem just the same. However, we do have a lot of rules. I've attended a lot of seminars on this, and one thing they're still hashing out is if we use it, will we have to follow the federal government grant rules? And the biggest one that I can think of is Davis-Bacon. So right now, a lot of things are in our budget that are not Davis-Bacon or prevailing wages. So that may be a double-edged sword. So we would have to work through that and make sure we're spending it on the right areas.
Right.
But I think it could all have the same effect.
Yeah, so basically the money's fungible. So if we apply it to something else and then we use it, that's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. You take it here, you put it here, you pay your debt over here, right?
Right, exactly.
Fungible.
And then how many budget cycles would we have to apply that lost revenue?
We have until 2026 to spend the money completely. We have to start spending it in 2024. Or we can spend it before that, but we have to at least start spending before the end of 2024.
And we can make that calculation on 2000. This calculation was done based on calendar year 2020, which is the first stopping point. We do it again on calendar year 2021, and then again on calendar year 2022. We were fortunate that we had some one-time capital projects in those years that in the base year 2019. A lot will depend on the school construction grant that we may, if we have large revenue this year and it drops off for 2022 calendar year, that we may have revenue savings again. So that's just the first calculation of revenue. That it's possible that we could try for more later, but I was surprised that we had anything the first year, but it was due to some capital projects and some in the base year and a WPCA assessment in the base year.
Right. And 4.1% increase rate too, right?
Okay. So between you and Steve, Marcia, I mean, if this is ongoing, do you see possibility of 100,000 in lost revenue if you really were putting on it in the next few years, or is there a chance to? What I'd hate to see is we don't capture the lost revenue and have the flexibility of all that money, and we lock into projects down the road if we can capture more money as lost revenue.
So we can try to do a little forecast to see what it might look like for the calendar year 2021. We've got the first 6 months done, and we could just look at what normally happens and pull in the big outliers, like what we think we'll get for school construction and things.
Yeah,
Steve, that would give you more flexibility.
Gives all of us more flexibility. That's correct, Glenn.
Right? I mean, I'm not trying to steal thunder or anything, but that just would give you more flexibility of now this cash can be used for 100 different more things.
Yep, that's correct.
So that's
all that flexibility.
Okay. Anyone else a question for Steve?
I have a question. Well, one is a question, one is a comment. Can anyone attend the ARPA meetings? Is it a public meeting or is it private?
Absolutely public. Will be recorded. We'll have a recording secretary. They have to file their agendas a day ahead of time, just like any other. We're asking them to do it just like any other board, and it's open to the public.
Cool. And I just, oops, sorry, go ahead. What, Steve? I just wanted to say really quick, to do a thank you to the Public Works. There was a very large sinkhole on the side of Hidden Brook Drive that someone reported, and it it kept getting bigger and bigger. And they literally came out on Labor Day and completely took care of it on Tuesday. And especially because I have to drive over it and ran on it. Very thankful. So thank you for that wonderful response.
You're welcome. Our guys, they're just great, and they'll come out whenever we ask them. If we determine that something could be dangerous, we'll call people in on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a Monday, on a holiday.
So thank you.
I will reiterate that. I think we have one of the best town crews in the area. There's no doubt in my mind. So,
100%.
Remember that when you see the overtime.
it's okay. You got to spend sometimes to get good service. I mean, that's a reality we all have to face, right?
For
And
sure.
it's so safety oriented that it's worth every dollar.
Yeah. All right.
Listen.
Anybody else with a question? Moving on, I think Rosa's available tonight here for us. So Rosa, your show.
Yep. Hi, thanks. I know I haven't been here with you guys all summer, and I know it's been a while since we last shared a formal financial report. But we have submitted to EFS, and we've released some roundabout figures at our last board meeting that I'm happy to share with you tonight. The actual final report will be reviewed by the Finance Subcommittee next Monday. And we just want to be sure that we've seen and reviewed it first, but then after that meeting, I will send it right over to you. Since we submitted to EFS, there were a few changes to some grants that we are keeping an eye on. So there might need to be an audit of that, but we're only looking at a few $1,000s in that range. So we're not anticipating a big swing as it relates to that. So summing up, the last time I think I gave you a financial report, we were looking at a $51,000 budget deficit. But we are actually swung the other way, and we are actually looking to return to the town approximately $76,000. So since May, we've captured savings in special ed transportation, athletic transportation, and instructional supplies. So quite a big swing from just before school let out. So that is what we are looking at, but we'll have, the official report to you early next week.
Okay. That's good news, actually. And I'm glad you were to use deficit instead of overspend, because I want everybody to know that we've been working very well with the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen, Steve and Marcia, on this with Rosa and the team. And it was never an overspend. It was always a deficit that we were on top of, we were in control of, and we were ready to support it because of the way the boards have been working together. So the fact that, we do use the word deficit, I appreciate that. And we're glad about the 76,000. Obviously, that shows that you guys are on top of it this year, as well as other years. But really this year, I think it really came together, Rosa. So thank you.
Yeah, no, this year was it really worked out well, considering, we spent probably over $1 million in COVID related expenses. So it was good the way we kind of, ran it through the budget, see how it ended up. And, this was the best ending we could have asked for.
Marcia, you're good with everything too, right? You've been talking with everybody, correct?
We agree on the numbers that I think we're a few $100s off because of those Board of Ed adjustments that have been made just this week. But we'll make them on our side too.
So you're happy. Steve, you're happy?
Yeah, I'm really happy. The reconciliation was a non-event between us and the Board of Ed, which hasn't been true a few years ago. It took a lot longer, but it's just clean as a whistle right now.
Any questions for Rosa?
I have a question. Is that 76,000? Are we thinking about putting that in the non-lapsing fund for next year to help pay down the education like we've done in past years?
I can show you what we talked about, but we weren't going to put it, we can do whatever you want, it's still time, but we weren't thinking of putting it in a separate non-lapsing fund just for the Board of Ed, because we wanted, in accordance with the draft fund balance policy, that we wanted to get our fund balance to where we thought it should be before we start segregating it out for pieces. But if we put it in one big pile, then it could go for anything.
Rosa, I guess the question to basically back up Ricky's question is there something in your budget process that was oversight or missed, or do you feel confident still that what you have, we can make work like this year and work together as boards?
I think if we continue on with the pattern that we've been using, the model we've been using, I think we're definitely comfortable with this number. Very confident with that. The 76,000, give or take probably maybe a couple thousand, depending on these grants that we still have to fix up and audit. But if you're talking about are you talking about like next year, like sort of
Yes.
running it through? Yeah. I think I don't want to speak
or
for the
this year.
entire board just yet, but I think that we would be comfortable continuing on with how we've been doing it.
Okay. Go ahead, Ricky. You had a question.
No, I was just saying, I mean, if for some reason there might be a need this year, if we can put it in, I don't know if it would even be appropriate or there would be time to.
Well,
add
we
it to
are in
non-lapsing
this year, Ricky,
fund.
right? Basically,
Yeah.
we're in
Right.
this year.
We
Right,
haven't
right, but I'm
identified
saying-
anything. We haven't identified anything yet. We shouldn't have any really big outliers or crazy COVID expenses. So, I mean, we never really know, but
No,
that is.
but you're comfortable at this time
Yeah.
is what we're gonna
Yeah.
say. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Anything
And
else you
to
want
your
to share?
question, Ricky,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
to your question, Ricky, there is still time that we could do that if we chose to.
Okay.
You want to share anything else, Rosa?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Any more
Thank you.
questions? Thank you. All right, Marcia, your turn.
All right. And I'll apologize in advance that I have to share the screen here. My internet is telling me it's unstable because I've lost my internet and I'm on my cell phone hotspot. Share screen. Screen one. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Thank you. So just going through this current fiscal year, that year end 2022 that we're 2 months in, that the only thing that I see in here as significant is FEMA revenues. That and the first thing I want to do is give a shout out to Kevin, our senior accountant. He is wonderful with this FEMA stuff. This is something that the finance office has taken over since we've been here, that is doing all the FEMA reporting and calculations that so he's just done a fabulous job, and it's hours and hours. I would say this one big storm is probably 100 hours of his time. That so the thing we've been talking about before is, when are we going to recognize this revenue? As accountants, we want to try and match it with the time period, but we need to have it measurable and available. And when you're dealing with FEMA, nothing is really measurable. You think you've got good numbers, and they say, oh, you might have bats, and then your numbers are all thrown off. So what I'm suggesting that we do is match it with the single audit rules. And what that does is, when the FEMA signs off on it, they obligate it. And so we report it in our single audit, which is a schedule of federal expenditures, in the year that it's obligated, the year that they approved it and said it's good. And so that's what I'm thinking, that we should probably do the same thing for our financial reporting. What that would mean to us is a lot of this will be revenue in year end 2022. So let's go through the FEMA money that we have out there. We have storm the August 4th storm. And these are different projects that are there that we had $320,000 worth of costs. And again, that's Kevin coordinating with the fire, with the police, with Public Works, just digging and digging for those costs. So we had 320,000. We had this amount that was obligated last year. So we picked this up as revenue, the 75% from FEMA. And actually we've received that cash already. This was a small amount that was obligated in July that they signed off on. This they signed off on the day I did this schedule. So that must have been what, Tuesday, that was signed off on. And of the costs we submitted, and again, he also goes back and forth with the insurance because it's just so many hoops they have us jumping through. But of the total costs that we submitted, they disallowed $45 from his schedule. So we've been approved for $201,000 that was sent to the state today, or the state, it goes from FEMA to the state, and then the state sends it to the payables department, and it's gone to the payables department today. So hopefully we'll see that money soon. So the total that we may get is about $250,000 from that storm last year.
What percentage are you working to, Marcia?
These are all 75%.
Yeah.
Is what FEMA pays for storms. For the vaccination and reopening, they're paying 100%, or at least for the vaccination. I'll have to double check reopening. But generally they pay 75%. Okay. And then the management costs is 5% of this number, and they pay 100% of that if we can support it. And again, Kevin sits with each of the people and helps develop, if they don't already have timesheets, help to develop their timesheets. So we make sure that we get our reimbursement that we can. So storm ice, so that'll be revenue in 2022. There's some additional ones that are still pending, but the big one was approved. And we thought, there may have been a bat problem, but we don't have that. We have FEMA for the vaccination that we're working on that application. We've got FEMA for reopening. We're working on that application. Storm Henri.
What's the reopening again, Marcia?
The reopening is just a obscure little one that costs from, I think it's March 5th of 2021 that they'll let us ask for reimbursement for. And we had calculated it at one time, thinking it's maybe $60,000. But there was some extra cleaning at the police that we hadn't been reimbursed for. There's some extra cleaning at the school that we hadn't been reimbursed for. But again, that's just the preliminary look of what we're thinking. That and now that things are tightening up a little bit, that we may have more costs for masks again and stuff. Storm Henri, which was August 21st, we didn't really have much damage or any damage. But Storm Ida, we have had damage, although it has not been claimed in Connecticut to be a disaster. In New York and New Jersey, it has. It was by the governor, but it needs to be by the president for us to get FEMA. But as you can see from Isaiah, that it wasn't declared until the January or February of 2021. So I don't know how long it'll take for that, but again, when it looked like that Kevin sent everyone the worksheets to start assuming it's FEMA and fill these out as you go along. So that's the most significant thing that is affecting 2022, is we should have extra revenue from FEMA. Any questions on that? All right. For 2021, the changes since you last saw it, the way government accounting works is that essentially we're looking at the cash flow to pay our June 30th bills. And so because of that, we pick up the next 60 days of revenue for the taxes, of back taxes that are collected. And since we did that last year too, we subtract out the July and August of last year. So essentially our taxes are what we collect on a cash basis from September 1 of 2020 to August 31st of 2021. And that July and August collection period was $250,000 higher this year than it was last year. So that gives a $250,000 bump in revenue that we didn't have and didn't know about at June 30th. Part of that is, as Steve was saying, there were 8 people that were there's 35 people on the tax sale. 8 of them paid their taxes off as soon as they got the notices, and that happened in July and August. So that is great news. Our revenues exceeded the budget, and you should have the revenue reports to see the breakdown, but that's about $250,000 higher than what we had thought. Expenditures, the changes from last month, we're going to ask you for transfers. We're not going to ask tonight because the Board of Selectmen have to approve it first, and their meeting is next Monday. So we'll ask you that for next month. In the drafts that we have now, there are 3 things that we're putting in that, and I think this number should be 6,500, and I just have it wrong on the PowerPoint, that the middle school wall, we don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't know how big of a project it is. So we're only putting in the engineering for the middle school wall. All 3 of these projects, had we gone and had all our bids and quotes done, we could have done purchase orders and encumbered them against last year. But since we didn't know the vendor, because we were still doing the due diligence on quotes and RFPs, that didn't get done. So we'd like to take and transfer these 3 projects, the money over to capital non-recurring, so that they can get done in a timely manner. So that is in your draft financial statements. Last month, we talked about also doing it to the wall restoration. This is the engineering. This would be the actual construction, but we don't know that amount. So we need better estimates. So we don't have that in your draft financial statements. Same with the blight remediation. We need better estimates. So we didn't go forward with that. We're proposing transferring the excess contingency to capital non-recurring, so we can have it as a contingency going forward. The rest of the surplus in revenue and the surplus in expenditures, right now, the draft financial statements show that as we took a half of the excess revenue over expenditures and put it to fund balance. And that's the next screen here. That in our fund balance, this number has got about 25,000 of expenditures and about 950,000 of, which is half of the excess that we had this year. Again, if you remember, in that fund balance, we were going to put this aside. We were going to not touch this amount and leave this as potential for future appropriations if we need them. So that's a little bit different strategy than last year because we've got that draft fund balance policy, whereas last year we moved it all into capital non-recurring. But so any questions on this slide?
So
Okay.
looking at this, we have 1.4 million in extra revenues. We had about $1 million in savings and spending. So basically, we have a $2.4 million surplus, correct?
And then it's reduced by about 500,000 because of this transfer right here. The excess, but yes.
So we reduced it by 500,000 to the contingency, which is still our money, right? It's in the CNR, but
Correct.
we still have 2.4 million in a surplus. So now if you took the 500, we still have 1.9 sitting out there. And then we have basically 1.9 in lost revenue. So we have about 3.8 million of free cash, basically.
Well, we haven't decided how we're going to use the 1.9. We have to wait for the committee to come back on that.
But essentially it could be cash. We could take it as cash to the town to utilize it for expenditures to the town.
That's correct.
That's quite a high percentage of our budget.
It is, but there are a lot of unusual things that happened this year to get us there. You know, conveyance fees are through the roof. Building permit fees are through the roof. We were very careful on our expenditures. We received a lot more in grants for COVID related than we estimated. So there are a lot of reasons why we are there. I don't think it was because it was poor budgeting or not knowing. It was very conservative budgeting that got us where we are.
Oh no, Steve, I'm not picking on that. No, I agree with you. No. I'm not saying to look at the budget to reduce line items because of the surplus. What I'm saying is, how do we use this surplus to reduce going forward on our taxpayers? We have a $3.8 million surplus of cash. How do we take that and turn it towards, hey, our taxpayers, we got through a hard time. How do we best use this money to reduce the tax burden in the next few years?
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about and we need to fully analyze again is the debt bubble. You know, if we took some of this money instead of paying what we normally do, cash for capital, we take some of this money and use that instead, it's going to lower the overall budget, which will help with the debt bubble. There's a bunch of things we could do with it to lower the overall expenses to residents.
And the debt bubble, when we were looking at it, was based on a 30-year amortization.
Right.
If we could bring that into a 20-year amortization, have it hurt a little bit more in the beginning, but pay for it with some of this, I mean, that saves millions.
Yeah.
This is what I'm trying to say. This is
Yeah.
where I think, Steve, I agree with you before we go off that this wasn't, you know, we over budgeted or we under budgeted or however. I think we put forth a good budget. I believe that. It's the way the wave took us right now, right? We are fortunate with good management. We are fortunate to get to the stage, but let's utilize this. I mean, again, where does the fire truck fall into this? Is this an opportunity to pay for a fire truck?
Yep.
You know, how do we make the best use of this money as a group is basic, and we're looking for guidance here.
Yeah. So we'll continue to work on that. We'll obviously involve you guys very directly. I think we have time to do this. I think we would wait to see what the ARPA committee comes back with. They've gotten a lot of good suggestions, but you're right. Maybe we use some of this money to pay for a fire truck, right? I think that's a great idea. And and then also we look at all the capital projects in November and December, and we'll be able to make some really good decisions that will, I think, to your point, Glenn, which is important, reduce your overall burden to our residents in the next couple of years.
All right. Go ahead, Marcia. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right, and that we're going to look a little bit at the financial statements, and I just wanted to show you this here, that if you don't know how to use bookmarks, push this little button, go to the little bookmark mark. And I tried to make it so that it was easier to follow. This is in order. If you go page by page, it's in order of the financial statements. but this gives you a little bit better idea, and I think it's easier to follow. You want to go to the budget revenue, you just click here and it brings that page up that which will populate except for my unstable network here. So just make sure that when you're looking at the financial statements, use this, that it'll save you a lot of grief. All right. So if we look at our balance sheets, and Ryan, that for your benefit, I'll tell you a little bit more about this. Each column is a fund. It's we have capital funds, and we have special revenue funds. Special revenue funds is money that's restricted for some purpose, and each one has a separate column, which is a separate trial balance. Anything that doesn't go in a separate column goes here into the general fund. This column is made up of a lot of little things. These are called major funds because revenues, expenditures, assets or liabilities are expected to be 5% higher than the total for that category. For example, this is a new one for ARPA. We have the first amount. Once this hits 5 million, this is going to be higher than 5%. So we put it as a major fund on this page, even though it may not be major this year, because we don't want to be bouncing around. So just looking at these other funds, we have the bonded capital fund. We're going to talk about that separately. And there's a list project by project that you can go to see everything that's in that fund and what happened during the year. We've got the elementary school construction fund, which is here. The water assessment fund that from 2 prior assessments is here, that the debt is paid out of there and the water assessments come in, and that's just holds that until everything's paid off. And we have this ARPA fund. We did collect half of it, 2.5 million in June, but we haven't earned any of that yet. So that the income statement is blank and it is showing up as an investment. We've got it in a special investment tool, and it's showing up as unearned revenue. But then let's look at the general fund here. That the general fund, this is on a modified accrual basis. So our equity is really our working capital. You don't see any capital assets up here or long-term debt because it's a modified accrual basis. Things that are going to turn into cash in 60 days or use our cash in 60 days. In theory, that this would be our cash if we were to have stopped the town at June 30th. This would be our cash at August 31st. It's not exact, but it's kind of like that. This is called fund balance, and our fund balance gets divided into different categories. The non-spendable is, you can see we have some of that over here. That's a trust fund for the library, that we can't spend that money, that it's an endowment fund. We have restricted. Someone on the outside is telling us how we can spend that money. So while we have equity here, fund balance in the water fund, the bonding tells us we can't spend that money to pay the finance director or something. It's got to be spent for debt. We have committed. That means it's gone to the highest level of the town, which these bonded capitals went to referendum and town meetings. We have assigned, that's earmarked, that, and we could unassign it if we wanted. And again, I've put half of our surplus in here, and we can still have plenty of time to change that for other strategies. And then our unassigned. Unassigned is what we use for cash flow, that the rule of thumb is we should have 16%. That's 2 months cash flow, at least 16%. And we've done a risk analysis to try and figure out where we should be specifically as the town of Brookfield, which was a little bit higher. But we're doing great considering where we came from. We generally compare that fund balance to budgeted revenue. This weekend, we sent to our bond counsel our figures for our offering statement, and they had this was part of it. So I just used their allocation, but it's showing the same trend that where if we were to calculate it, we would have taken it and compared it to budgeted revenue and be close to 15%. They took it to the actual revenue, and we had a huge amount of revenue this year. So that's why the percent is a little bit lower. But you can see that that we're going in the right direction. We should still be going in that direction. That one of the things that we're told every year on our call with the rating agency is our fund balance is low. Our fund balance in Connecticut is low compared to the rest of the country because we have very stable revenues and property taxes. But our fund balance is low compared to other AAA communities. We're hoping that we've made, because we did such good budgeting decisions this year, we're hoping that we gained some ground on that, and we'll be finding out in the next week or two.
Can you overlay onto that graph, Marcia? And I don't know if it would be something, but it would be nice to see where the mill rate has gone against us increasing the general fund, because the mill rate has consistently gone down. In the past 4 years, the mill rate has gone down. And I don't want people to think that, gee, we keep increasing the mill rate to increase the general fund the way it's gone up. I think it's been done through some well-planned thoughts and processes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I can do something. I'm not sure the mill rate is the exact thing you're thinking, but I do have a lot of data, and I do have a lot of graphs that we use at budgeting time. Let me pull some up and see what might be most appropriate.
I'm just saying, so we don't give the idea of people worry about this general fund like it's too big. Why are we sitting on this money? And I know, Steve, why we do it. I can preach to the preach of we're getting better interest rates. Our ratings are so high. We're at the highest of the ratings. But it's just something I think we got to talk about, so we get rid of that conception.
Yeah, I think one good way to talk about it that everyone would understand is in our borrowing last year, we had originally planned to go for 30 years and we went for 20, and we'll save over $21 million just from that.
So yes, let me find a graph that works.
If we didn't have the fund balance we have now, and we haven't been growing it, there's a very good chance we would have been forced to go to 30 years and pay a higher interest rate.
Correct.
So this is like buying insurance when you go to borrow.
Yeah, and
paid off big for us.
And anyone that talks about fund balance, have them also look at our debt compared to other towns, because that's a little more sobering.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Thank you.
Because this is only part of the equation. So I just wanted to kind of show where we stand, what I thought were the important parts from the financial statements that you should be looking at and thinking about. For our bonded capital, that at the end of the year, we had $1.8 million in there. That of that, we don't have the option to have something that's not committed to a project, of having excess funding in there. But we had 1.8 million. We had 1.1 committed for projects. And so the stuff that is extra, we'll be offsetting the bonds this year. So we don't take out as many bonds that, and so essentially just reallocate that to something else for when projects come in and they come in under budget, which is really our only choice, that it adds up. And so we're going to take that and offset the bonds this year. We also have our capital non-recurring fund that you guys used to call it cash for capital. We call it capital non-recurring. That one, we have projects that they start out at 1.5 million. We added some money with our original budget The additional appropriations, those are three of those are things that we talked about just now with the oil tank, the air conditioning, the wall engineering. We also added some things with the land use office reconstruction. I think those are the biggest things that are added here. We had some revenues that some of those projects brought in grant money. Again, the biggest one, land use renovation, was steep money for 128,000. We spent some money. We closed out some projects. So at the end, we have 1.2 million of projects that are still in force. And again, if you look at the financial statements on these pages, the drafts that you have, you can see what totals up to equal that. We did say in our budget, we were going to take some of that to balance the budget. We said that last year and we did it. And we said it again this year. And so it's 259,000 that we took to balance the budget next year, the capital budget. We took some money to balance the general fund budget as well, but we didn't end up using that for the 21 year. We had some revenue that was from a premium, these two together. We decided to use the minimum amount to balance the general fund budget, that 1.6 to cover the debt bubble. And so now we have stuff that's not allocated to projects, which is $1.5 million at the end of the year. That if we said, oh my goodness, the roof is falling in, we have $1.6 million here. We could take it and move it back to the general fund to cover a debt bubble in 1 year or a problem that comes up. So this is the money here is the contingency that we talked about being transferred in. And again, it's not too late to change any of this stuff. And so the total fund balance in capital non-recurring is 4.6, but this is how it's allocated and what it's allocated for. Really, the only thing that is something we can control, since all of this is already spoken for, is right here. Any questions on that?
Can we use that for the fire truck? I mean, we keep talking about different places to get that money from, but wouldn't that be a good place to pull it from?
We could. I think that we would have to still go to a town meeting because of the size of the appropriation, but we could double check on that. But then we don't have it for the debt bubble. Well, that's what we were trying to save it for, was the debt bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, ideally, I think it'd be nice to fund the fire truck with 20-year debt versus paying the cash.
All right.
Go ahead, Marcia.
So those are the full summaries are in the draft financial statements. We talked about having other funds that are out there. And so this is the income statement for the other funds. Parks and Rec has a fund that their revenue and expenditures came in. It was great. They made a profit this year, even though it was such a horrible year for them. That they had lower revenues, but they really cut back on their expenses as well. The Small Cities Grant Fund, that we've got loans out there to low-income individuals that two of them were paid off this year, that they just sit and they wait, and then we have the option of reloaning them with that. The Gursky Property Fund, that's for the conservation fund that there's rental income that comes in, and then there's expenses for the building. Some of that fund balance is restricted. If I showed the balance sheet, you would see that based on the grants on these and the rules for these properties. Social Services Fund, that is an emergency fund. They get donations and grants, and they spend it out for their clients. The Town Grant Fund, that anything that comes in with strings attached, We try to put in the town grant fund so we can monitor it more closely. This little asterisk means that you can see the details of exactly what makes up all these numbers in another schedule. There's a number of police grants that are included in there. There's social services grants. They're probably the two of the biggest that goes to the town grant fund, and they all go through the selectmen when the grant is being approved. Education has a similar grant fund that they go through the process of applying for these grants with the state. And again, you can see that there's a asterisk here, which means there's another schedule that will give you these totals from what the Board of Ed said today, that some of this will change by a few dollars. The Cafeteria Fund, that is here. The big change this year is nobody had to pay for except teachers. Nobody had to pay for lunches because of COVID. The federal government gave us extra money and paid for them all. And we talked a few years ago about they're going to pay $30,000 a year to help reimburse some of the costs that they have in the general fund. We've got more. We've got the Contract Services Fund, which is the Police Outside Service Fund. That they had a fantastic year in 2020, not as much in 2021. But they're still making a profit. They have 267,000 there, a surplus, not a profit. 267,000 in there. And that's when Jay comes to you and says, "Hey, we want to use it on this project or another project." Asterisk tells you there's more details in another schedule if you want to see that. And the details for this one would be what projects were approved and are still out there. Asset Forfeiture Fund, that money comes from the federal and the state governments. And there's a schedule that backs that up and divides it and tells you what is state and what is federal if you care. The library has a special revenue fund that they put their fees and charges in, and they had 26,000 at the end of the year. They also have an endowment fund that they can't spend the principal, and they have a spending policy that they spend 4%, or they're eligible to spend 4% of the earnings a year. So if we make 20%, they can spend 4%. If last year they lost money in this, they could spend 4%. And we do those calculations for them. So the balance sheet would show how much of that they can spend and how much of that is principal. Capital projects, we have an open space fund. We used some of that. No, I guess we didn't use that. This 24,000 developers can have open space in their developments, or they can pay us money for open space. So we had one developer that paid us the money here, so that's why it's increased. And then the capital non-recurring fund we looked at earlier, asterisk means that there's more details. One thing that we're going to talk about with the auditors is that there's some new rules that have come out with student activity funds, which in the past had been agency funds, and now they're going to be called custodial funds, although our auditor believes that they don't qualify as custodial funds because of all the involvement by state statute. The state statutes require the Board of Ed to have on that fund. So Ken and I got his write-up on it on Saturday, and we'll review that. So special student activity funds may be another column in here as we go forward. They're always on the financial statements, just a change in placement. Any questions on those?
No.
All right. Pension. We already have our pensions in, and we're waiting for our OPEB But last year we didn't get this until November. But our pension is in great shape. It's 123% funded, and that is because we had a 28% return on investment this year. And you can see that's the best we've ever had. That I have heard that there's supposed to be a big crash coming up, but I don't follow that stuff, so I don't. Not saying that officially, just a rumor. But we're in good shape. Pardon me?
Said it's on record. It's pretty official now.
Yeah. But that's what's causing that, and it could just as easily disappear next year when we have something that looks more like this. But again, that's the hard work of the Arpa Committee that is working there. So the financial statements that the long-term debt, we hope to complete this week. That we're hoping that the actuary reports come in this week as well. Capital assets, we had a capital asset inventory done during the year, and so now we're kind of we're comparing that to what we had, make sure that everything's there. We'll come back to you with a new capitalization threshold. Right now, we're capitalizing anything over 5,000 of any category. So if you fill a big pothole, in theory, we're supposed to capitalize that. And we don't need the same threshold for every type of asset. So certainly we want a higher threshold for roads and bridges than we might have for equipment. So we'll come back to you with that. And it's going to be an adjustment to the financial statements, a prior period adjustment, because the capital asset summaries we had before were carried over for 20 years that and some years they just put in total capital assets for the year, and we don't even know what they are. So so they will change the financial statements, not fund balance, not anything that you look at, just that exhibit 1. The WPCA reporting that they are done. I just have to give them the pension allocation, how much is theirs, which we'll do this week. The financial statements still need notes, management's discussion and analysis. And this I finished today, the schedule of federal and state expenditures. So we're in fabulous shape for when the auditors come in next week. Auditors will be here for the next 2 weeks. I had a concern about the federal single audit, although I talked to the lead auditor last night that on a meeting with other Connecticut auditors, they were saying that they were not going to get the federal single audit out on time. That is a section of the financial statements. Again, we rarely look at it, but it's tucked in the back. We could get the financial statements without that. And the reason that they're saying they're not going to get it out is the rules for some of this COVID spending don't come out until November of 2021. That, if you've got 25 or 55 municipal clients and it comes out November 15th, you've got 45 days to do all that auditing for all those clients. So that's why they were saying that. We did the schedules today, and the schedules, the revenue that we have from federal grants doesn't look like it'll slow us down. So I think we may not have to worry about this as much because of that. And I meant to point and not change. And there's one hot button topic that this lost revenue, when do we record it? When it was lost, which would be we've already lost it, or when we spend it. And the auditor and I both think that it's here, but we've got one large auditor out there that's thinking that it's here. So just a minor thing, but I was worried that we might be delayed because of that. But Mike said he doesn't think that'll delay it at all. Any questions on any of that?
Hey, Marcia, quick question. Is that a PCAOB issue or a GASB? Who decides what's holding that up?
That is the Office of Management and Budgets, that they do the, I'm trying to get you, oh, let me try to unshare my screen. Am I still shared? Office of Management and Budget does that, oh, and share. So they're the ones that would decide where it is. And so they would have to go back and talk to the Department of Treasury that, so it's on these meetings that I attend, it's a big point of contention that, but there's just one auditor, who's my former partner, that is bringing this up and saying that, no, this is something that we have to wait to figure out.
Wow, that's very interesting.
I thought it was, but I didn't think
Yeah,
you guys.
no, absolutely.
Any questions on any of that stuff?
I do not. Anybody have any questions?
None for me.
All right, Dan, anything on the audit committee that you want to talk about to back up Marcia?
On this year's audit, no. Marcia, do you want to go? Should we talk about the bid process, or you're not ready to do that yet?
So I just would need authorization to move forward if you guys are thinking about it. What the concern is, one, we think our auditor's doing a good job. That they're very thorough, they're very easy to deal with. Their fees are very good. And the time, we have the best time for the audit, which is September, which is a very hard time to get, and we are in that spot. That this is the end of our 5-year term with the auditors, and so the question was, do we, and I'll try and pull it up as I'm talking, do we go out to bid for year-end 2022, or do we ask for an extension of the same contract? In order to make that decision, we did try to do some due diligence, and it should be your decision. I shouldn't have anything to do with it. So we did try to do some due diligence to see what's happening, because what I was hearing is audit fees are increasing. That and that was a general, throughout the country type of statement. That so I wanted to know what was happening in Connecticut. And so let me pull this up here. That here's screen 3. And so what we did was we contacted every auditor, every town that went out to bid in the last few months, since January 1st. We kind of grouped them by size. This is what is significant. There's other things that are significant if they have a WPCA, if they don't. One town that's not here, 2 towns have electrical companies, that would certainly change it. This is us. And so here are the fees that are being charged right now for each of these audits.
Marcia, are you sharing something? I don't see anything.
Oh,
Sorry. Thanks.
there. Okay, sorry, I had the second share I had to hit. So these are who their auditors are. This is the fee that that's currently being paid. And then we just went to find out what all the fees were, who bid, what the fees were. And for the most part, bidding on towns our size or above is CLA, it's formerly Bloom Shapiro, is bidding. This one bid on one. but they don't normally bid on the bigger ones. And then PKF O'Connor Davies are the ones bidding. And do I have another one over there? Oh, and RSM has not been bidding. We can't use PKF O'Connor Davies because they're not independent because of me. So if we were to go out to bid, it would be our current auditor or Bloom Shapiro, now CLA, called CLA. There's nothing wrong with them. They do 56 audits in the state, and they do the biggest one of the state. So this is just information on that. So there's not a lot of competition that we'd be looking for, that we'd be against. It doesn't look like we would have a fee that's lower. We certainly would not get our September timeframe. So that's the things that we were thinking about. I don't think that we want to go out to bid just to, say, oh, that's our policy, and make firms do all that work without really intending to switch. So the thought was that if you agreed that we could reach out to the auditors and say, all right, your fee has been increasing $1,000 a year. That seems to be a fair increase on both sides. What if we increased it $1,000 a year for the next 2 years or the next 3 years and extended it and then go out to bid at that time?
So
Dan, you want to take lead? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been in, Marcia's shared with me this information already. I've been part of the conversation via email, electronic conversation, but as well as, the thought of, should we go out to bid because it's policy, or should we not go out to bid because we're happy with our service and our fees? And my conclusion is similar to Marcia's in a number of things. One, I agree that there's a very small number of auditors who we would consider using because of quality and expertise. I am confident, based upon the work that Marcia has done, that our audit fees are within market and quite possibly or probably at the low end of market, which is good. And I know for a fact that the quality of service, advice, and expertise we've gotten since I've been audit chair for the last 4 years is excellent. The assistance that we got in the first couple of years was amazing. And the accommodations they've made now that we're in better shape has been great. I would highly recommend negotiating a fee directly with them, bypassing the bid process, and sticking with this audit firm would be my recommendation to the board.
And I agree with Dan 100%.
I will speak out too, is Dan, since you've taken this over, I don't think your work, along with, Steve and Marcia's work, is the best we've ever been as a town, I think, in the audit season. So I would yield to your expertise on this without a doubt. I think that if we have a good relationship and we're confident that the audit's right, I don't see a reason why not to negotiate. So Eileen, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think you said it, but I missed. Is it a different auditor each year, even though it's the same firm?
I asked that question as well.
Okay.
It's not a different auditor. That it's the PCAOB that says you have to switch every 5 years. Those auditors are much closer, more to the client than our auditors. Our auditors come in once a year. PCAOB auditor is generally there year round and doing reporting 4 times a year. So the PCAOB has that rule. The AICPA, which is different audit standards, talked about that rule and considered it and did not think it was necessary. That Dan talked about maybe we just switch audit partners. And at this time, I believe that Mike is the only government audit partner there. That
Okay. My only concern, and I'm sure that pretty much everybody on the board, maybe not Ryan, 'cause I'm not sure if you've been in town long enough. Was it 6 years ago that when the schools changed auditors, that there was, and again, like your background, we know that you're checking and dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and you know that it's being done correctly. But there was the instance, 6 years ago, where the school auditor changed, and all of a sudden some of the practices that had been accepted by the same person that had been doing it year over year were found to not be plausible. And so that's my only reason to support a switch in auditor, not necessarily in a firm. But again, I mean, you have that experience and you know that they're doing what's supposed to be done. I think that as long as we're not putting this in stone, and if we feel the need to change it in the future, that's possible to change.
But I want to say they're auditing me, so don't rely on me. That I appreciate that you do, but it is that if you wanted that, have Mike, we can talk about it, have Mike come in next month or the month after, whenever, and just say, this is what happened. What safeguards do we have? Or what happened back then? Because I don't really know how.
Mike wasn't here when it happened.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the whole point, right? That might not be a bad idea, Eileen. I had the exact same question. I know with our audits at my company, it's exactly that. We've had the same audit firm for 15 years, but every 5 years we get a new partner coming in.
Yep.
But Marcia's right. It's for quarterlies, and they're involved in our offering, so they're much more involved.
Mhm.
I was not aware that Michael was the only government auditor at this firm, so I think having him come in and kind of talk about it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I pending that, I still stand by the recommendation. Just because we were going to go out to bid doesn't mean that we would change necessarily either.
Right.
So
Okay.
So let me call Michael and see if he's can speak to some of the work he's done and maybe get him involved in the next meeting, if that's all right. Does that make sense? I mean, Marcia, I know that it's but what's the time frame for this?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, that if we were to go out to bid, it wouldn't be, I wouldn't suggest it before January, that if you really want a response, because the auditors have a big deadline of all these reports on December 31st, and you'll get more response after the first of the year.
Yep, I agree. I also don't want to step on negotiations on what we're doing with the fee. So you haven't brought that up yet, correct?
I have not.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, let's have
All right.
Michael come in if you want, and then we can discuss fees with them.
Right.
I think they'll be very reasonable.
What I'd like to see is any members of the board that has questions, like Eileen had a question, let's send it to Dan and let Dan coordinate questions if you have them. So when Michael does come in, we're ready to go with the questions of concerns that we have. So we can, out of that meeting, we can make a decision.
That's great.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Dan?
Nope, I'm all set.
Marcia, you want to add, or Steve, you want to add to the audit side of
No,
this?
I'm good.
I'm all
All
set.
right. Old business, none. New business, Steve, I just want to go over the boys' locker room because a lot of people are asking questions, and it was supposed, according to our budget, we were trying to get it done this summer before
Right.
school. Where do we stand? What does it look like? What do we have?
All right, I want to give you guys a little history because I think a couple of you haven't heard about this. The NBC charged the town with sending out a bid, and we did that. In that bid, we asked for it. The NBC wanted to get a 2-week turnaround time for response to the bids. Primarily, I think because we wanted to try to get this project in this summer. And obviously we couldn't do it till it was funded with the budget. We sent the bid out on 5/14. We posted the bid on 5/14. 5/19, we had a pre-bid meeting on site. 4 contractors showed up. 6/2/21, that we issued the bid, and the final day people could respond was June 2nd. We only received 1 bid from 1 vendor, and they bid $3.1 million. Tecton had originally estimated this cost 3 years ago, of $1.3 million. Now, Hawley's bid of 3.1 million included working nights and weekends in order to get the project finished by the start of school. If we allowed them to use standard working hours and extend into the fall, we could have deducted 947,000 from that bid. So, but we still would have been at $2.2 million versus a 1.3 budget. I then asked Gordian on 6/15, which Gordian is a state-approved contractor that does projects based on unit costs. We met with them on 7/6. They came back to us on August 19th, and they submitted their quote of $2.47 million, and that includes their normal markup. We sent both of those over to the MBC for review, and Paul Checo emailed Eddie Wadowski, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, at Tecton, asking him to review Gordian's pricing. Eddie acknowledged he would do that. We don't have that back yet. I think, the bid that we sent out, I think the problem we may have had with some of the contractors, Tecton had created 954 pages of specifications with 45 different drawings for the boys' locker room. It's extremely detailed. Glenn had pointed out that there was a miss. They also used one of their subcontractors, CES, and there were a couple things where the specs didn't match between CES and Tecton, but those were not major things. So our question now on this is, and I sent a note to Paul Checo today, where do we want to move forward? And my guess is what we should do is, I think one of the reasons we got such high pricing is there were a lot of pent up demand for projects because of the pandemic. People weren't doing projects last summer. They held them off to this summer. The contractors' books were full of business. And in a sense, I don't blame Hawley. They came in and said, listen, we'll do this project, but here's what we want to be paid for this project. I think our best course of action is to wait for Tecton to come back to us, look at it, tell us if the 1.3 million is still a reasonable number. Now, remember, they were very good on the new school project. They were right on the money for virtually every single part of that project, whether it was steel, furniture, equipment, concrete, site work. The prices that they said we would get quoted were very, very close. So I'm thinking what we should do, in my opinion, is to wait until the January timeframe, bid it out then again, get the information from Tecton as to whether they think the 1.3 million is a reasonable number still. If not, then we'll have to look at it and then rebid it. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually. One of the concerns I had is, how do we protect that $1.3 million from being piecemeal spent? We have approved it. So what are the mechanisms in place that we don't just spend $800,000 to fix the showers, and then 2 years down the road, we need $4 million to do what we wanted to do?
Yeah, that has happened before. The NBC is in charge of the project, but the Board of Selectmen would say to them, we want one complete project. We do not want to piecemeal it or parse it out over 3 or 4 years to get under various budgets. I think we'll save money in the long term if we simply do it as one project, because you don't want a contractor coming in, they're going to knock stuff down. We got to move this to do this. Doing it piecemeal, I agree with you, Glenn, is not a good way to do it. But the Board of Selectmen can tell the NBC, we want to do it as one project.
So there is a safeguard in place.
Yes, there is.
Okay. All right. Any questions from any board members? So we're all clear, because I know a lot of us are getting asked questions about this.
Yeah.
Nobody has any questions? All right.
No, actually, that update answered a lot of it for me. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
I think a lot of the issues we have in town, Steve, is we get piecemeals and everybody tries to get the information out, but sometimes on something like this, people are only getting 2/3 of the story.
Yeah, or they're hearing one thing and not something else.
Correct.
Virtually, and Glenn, you're aware of this, you've been on the board a long time. every project, almost every single capital project we've done over the last 5 years, we've been right on budget, maybe a little bit over, but usually at or under. So this was pretty surprising. This is an anomaly, especially given the accuracy and the track record of Tecton in predicting this. But these things do happen. I think it's pandemic related.
I do too, but how do we, just from an outside problem like future fixing, did we really need a 950-page spec to go out and we only gave our people 2 weeks to bid on that? That's like a tall task. Number
Yeah.
one, to read through that many pages. Are they truly needed? And how do we put a firm on 2 weeks? Are we getting the best bids at that point?
I think we had a couple things all align against us. One, usually a project like this and with that many pages of specs, we would allow 4 to 6 weeks to get it back.
Yes.
I understand why we did the 2 weeks because we really wanted to get it in this summer. But I think a lot of the contractors said, there's just no way I can go through all those specs and get you an answer in 2 weeks, that they would be comfortable standing behind a bid. Paulie came in at a very high number and they said, okay, I'm guessing, we can't read all the specs, but we've done these projects before. We know what's involved. Even if we missed something in the bid process, if we bid 3.1 million, we'll cover any possible expense we might have missed. That's what I think. So I think, we got caught by the pandemic. We got caught by the 2 weeks. If we redo it in January and give 4 to 6, 7 weeks for response time, there will not be as much demand next year. And I think we'll get better responses. But before we do that, I want to get that information back from Tecton. Don't you agree that the 1.3 million is good? Or they may say, you know what? Steel is going up, this is going up, concrete's going up. You really need to look at a different number. Do you agree, Glenn?
I do, Steve. Are you still shooting for January? We get it out,
Yeah,
but we still do the work in the summertime as
Yeah.
well? Is that the goal here?
yeah, that's what I would like. Get it out in January, February, give the contractors plenty of time to set up. And then the day after school closes, send them in there. And they can get it done during the summer without having overtime or weekend work.
All right. Thanks, Steve. I'm gonna.
So I have some, go ahead. I mean, I didn't want to interrupt you, Glenn.
No,
but you're
Dan,
moving on.
go ahead. I was moving on, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so my question is on what we approved. So we approved 1.3-ish million for the full project. Is that an evergreen approval and just kind of stays out there until we fish or cut bait? What happens to the 1.3? That's my first question. Related to that, it's kind of a combined question. Related to that is, if the bid comes in and we realize it is closer to $3 million, obviously the 1.3 that we approved, I guess, would be allocated to that, and we'd conceivably appropriate the balance. But what if we decided that it's just too much money and we don't want to do it anymore? What happens to that 1.3 approval? So that's the question I have.
Yeah. So the 1.3 million stays good for 3 years,
Okay.
right, in capital projects. So we still have time on that end. If a bid did come in at 3 million and we have 1.3, you're right. We have 3 choices. We don't do the project at all, which I don't think is a good answer. We downsize the project, right, which I don't think is a good answer. Or we value engineer the project, meaning cut some of the stuff out and ask the architects, the engineers to re-examine what can we change to get this down lower. Those would be our options as I see them.
Answer your question.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna move on now to other items to come before the board, and I'm gonna add something real quick. Steve, we've been talking as a group about a handoff package because we all could change.
Yeah.
There could be new members sitting in this whole meeting. Not one of us is guaranteed a seat back.
Right.
That's one of the items I'd like to add to that, Dan, just to clarify it, right? I mean,
Agree. Yep.
Anything that has been somewhat convoluted to us, I think will be convoluted to people coming in.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Yep.
I just wanted to say, again, reiterate that we are working. Dan had a draft that he put together, and we have some time yet, but we're going to add to this as we go along. And just so you're aware, some of the questions we're asking are to this handoff, so we can make a clean handoff if we were to change.
Oh, no, that's fine. I think that's a very good idea. It'll make it much easier for a new board.
And I
Yeah,
think it
and
would
so-
also help if 2 or 3. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Continue.
Go ahead, Dan.
Dan, you're muted.
So
Okay.
I was
I
just going to
think
say
it-
that,
Go ahead.
Glenn, go. I'm walking in the house.
No,
Go.
Dan, you go, because I was just going to close.
I was just going to say, Steve and Marcia, that I put a draft together. I shared it with the members of the Board of Finance, gotten some comments back, making revisions. I'm going to share it with them, and then I'm going to share it with the two of you to review and add and make your comments, because we do have some questions for you as well.
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, all I was going to add, Dan, is I think it'll even help if 2 of us get reelected back. It'll be a tool to hand off to the other 4 members,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
right? So I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
I do too.
All right. Anything else to come before the board? Not hearing none. Okay. Then we'll go on to public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to do public comment? Nope. All right, then who's going to do the Mulvaney rule?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor,
I.
I
Hey.
have a good night.